My family laughed when I showed up at my sister's engagement party. They told me I didn't belong there, that the luxury around us was not for people like me. What they didn't know was that I owned the entire building they were standing in. 10 minutes later, their perfect world collapsed right in front of them. My name is Ethan. I'm 31 now, and for most of my adult life, my family has treated me like a failure they had to manage, not a son they could be proud of. Not just the black sheep, not just the different one. No, in their eyes, I was a disappointment they openly mocked, a mistake they tolerated, a problem they believed would never amount to anything, and they made sure I felt it. My mother, Caroline, worshipped my younger sister, Olivia. Olivia was her golden child, the prodigy, the one who always made the right choices. Her entire life was carefully curated so she could appear flawless in every possible way. Perfect fiancé, perfect job, perfect social circle, perfect future. And then there was me, the son who left law school after one semester, the son who didn't like big dinners or small talk, the son who preferred coding alone in a room to smiling at people he didn't respect. In their eyes, I chose to be a failure. In their eyes, I gave up. In their eyes, I was the embarrassment they kept on the sidelines during holidays. None of them ever asked what I was building. None of them cared to. They had already decided who I was, background noise. But that story didn't bother me. Not at first. Then came the engagement party. Olivia was engaged to Daniel Whitmore, son of a wealthy real estate developer. The Whitmores were old-school rich, known for their high-end properties and the way they looked down on anyone who didn't belong to their world. So of course my mother was ecstatic. Her daughter marrying into money, into prestige, into status, that was her dream come true. The engagement party was held in a luxury event space at the top of a skyscraper in downtown New Haven. Crystal chandeliers, glass walls overlooking the city, white-gloved servers carrying trays of champagne. The works. My mother texted me the location without a greeting or explanation. It wasn't an invitation. It was an obligation. I arrived quietly, dressed in a simple charcoal suit. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed money. That was deliberate. I wanted to see something. I wanted to confirm something. As I checked in with the concierge, he recognized me instantly. "Good evening, Mr. Ellis," he said. "Penthouse inspection today?" "Not today," I replied with a small smile. "Just attending an event." He nodded respectfully. That should have been my first clue that tonight was going to be interesting. When I stepped into the ballroom, my mother saw me first. Her expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "Ethan," she hissed under her breath, "why would you come dressed like that? At least try not to embarrass your sister on her big night." She didn't say hello, not even a fake smile. Olivia arrived soon after, linking arms with her fiancé. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. "I didn't think you'd come," she said flatly. Daniel's eyes slid down my suit and back up, amused. "Did you take the wrong elevator, man?" he asked. "This party is for the top floor, not the service level." A few nearby guests laughed. My mother didn't defend me. She didn't correct them. She didn't even flinch. In her mind, this was just another moment where, of course, Ethan didn't fit in. I stayed calm. This was exactly what I expected. But then Olivia leaned in, lowering her voice in a way she probably thought was kind. "Look, maybe just don't talk to anyone too much tonight, okay? I don't want people thinking you just wandered in by mistake. The thing is, I didn't wander in. I owned the place, literally. 3 years earlier, I founded a software security company. One investment turned into two into 10. A government contract changed everything. And by 29, I bought the entire building we were standing in, the Whitmore Tower. But my family never knew. Because when people make it clear they don't care about you, they don't get updates about your life. Still, their arrogance tonight was impressive. The humiliation attempts continued. A group of Daniel's friends asked me if I needed help finding the exit. His father asked Olivia if her brother always dressed like he shops on clearance. One woman asked me to refill her glass, assuming I worked there. I answered politely every time. But then something happened that changed the vibe instantly. The board of the building, my board, arrived. They came to speak with me privately about the quarterly budget report and upcoming tech installations. I didn't know they were going to be here tonight. They didn't know I was attending the event. But when they walked in, every single one of them came straight toward me. "Mr. Ellis, good evening," my CEO said loudly. The room fell silent. My family turned. Daniel stopped mid-sentence. My mother froze. "Sir, the contractors need your approval on the security upgrades for the tower," he continued. "They're waiting in your office." Olivia blinked. "Office?" she repeated. The CEO smiled politely at her. "Yes, the penthouse office upstairs. Mr. Ellis Company owns the Whitmore Tower." Several people gasped. Daniel paled visibly. My mother swayed, like someone had shoved her. I looked directly at her for the first time that evening. "You didn't know that, did you?" I asked softly. "You never asked." She swallowed hard. What do you mean you own the tower?" I shrugged lightly. "I bought it 3 years ago. The service elevator your fiancé joked about leads to my private floor." Silence rippled across the room. Daniel's father stepped in, suddenly sweating. "Ethan, my boy, I had no idea. Why didn't you mention?" "You never cared about anything I did," I said quietly. "But that's okay. Tonight is Olivia's night." But it was too late for them. Daniel's expression changed from arrogance to panic. "So you're successful," he said, forcing a smile. "That's great. Really great. Olivia always believed in you." I laughed once. "No, she didn't." Olivia flushed bright red. I just didn't think that I'd ever be someone worth respecting," I finished. My mother reached for my arm. "Ethan, sweetheart, let's talk." But I pulled away gently. "You had years to talk to me. Tonight isn't about catching up. Enjoy the party." And with that, I left the ballroom, stepping into the private elevator with my team. As the doors closed, I watched their shocked faces one last time. For the first time in my life, they finally looked at me, really looked at me, not as a failure, not as an embarrassment, not as background noise, but as a man who built something bigger than anything they ever believed possible. And I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to insult them. I didn't have to prove anything. All I had to do was show up. As the elevator ascended toward my private floor, the reflection in the mirrored wall showed a version of myself I hadn't fully recognized until that moment. Calm, steady, in control. Not the boy they dismissed. Not the failure they believed I was. Not the shadow of Olivia's golden spotlight. For the first time in my life, I felt the shift. The internal click of reclaiming something I didn't even know I'd lost. My dignity. When the doors opened to the penthouse hallway, my COO, Michael, glanced over with a knowing expression. "They didn't know, did they?" he asked. I shook my head. "They never asked," I said quietly. We stepped into my office. An expansive, glass-walled space overlooking the entire city. The skyline stretched endlessly, glittering with thousands of lights. I always loved this view at night. It reminded me that the world was bigger than my family's opinion of me. Michael placed a set of documents on my desk. "We can postpone these until tomorrow," he said. Tonight looked intense. I exhaled slowly. "It was overdue," I replied. 8 years overdue." He nodded and left me alone. For a few moments, I stood at the windows, letting the quiet settle. People often think the hardest part of building a company is the risk, the uncertainty, the hours. They're wrong. The hardest part is building something when everyone you love believes you're incapable of it. My success didn't come from spite, though a part of me now realized that spite had been excellent fuel. Came from necessity. I had to become someone outside of who my family told me I was. A soft knock broke the silence. It was Elena, my CFO, one of the sharpest minds I'd ever worked with, and one of the few people who knew the truth about my family. "You okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said. "It's just strange." "What is?" "That they're probably still downstairs trying to figure out when everything changed." Elena gave a small smile. I've met your mother once, she said. She doesn't seem like the type who handles being wrong gracefully. That's an understatement. She stepped closer, leaning the folder against her hip. Well, tonight they learned the truth. Not because you bragged. Not because you demanded validation. They learned because success eventually speaks for itself. I appreciated that. But then she added something that stuck with me. And they learned because you finally allowed them to see you. That's power, Ethan. Not the money. The choice. After she left, I stayed alone in my office for a few more minutes before returning to the party floor. Not to embarrass them. Not to make a dramatic entrance. Not to rub anything in. I simply wanted to leave the building through the front, not the private garage, a small symbolic decision but one that mattered to me. When I stepped out of the elevator, the ballroom was quieter. Not silent, but quieter. Conversations were more hushed. People whispered as I walked past, eyes following me like I was a headline in motion. Daniel was no longer surrounded by friends. Olivia looked like she had aged 5 years in 30 minutes. My mother's face was stiff with shock, shame, and something else, fear. She approached cautiously, her heels tapping nervously against the marble floor. Ethan, she breathed. Can we talk privately? I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the child waiting for her approval. I was a man evaluating whether she deserved my time. All right, I said. We stepped into a quieter corner near the windows. The night city sparkled beneath us. I don't know what to say, she began, her voice trembling. You've built all of this, and we knew nothing. You never wanted to know, I said calmly. She flinched. That's not fair. It's completely fair, I replied. The only time you called me in the last 3 years was to ask if I could help Olivia move. That's not true. Mom, I checked. Every call was a request. Never a question about my life. Never a conversation about my work. Never a single moment where you wondered if I might be doing something important. She opened her mouth but closed it again. Her silence said everything. I continued, tonight wasn't about humiliating you. I didn't plan any of this. But it happened because you and Olivia and Daniel's family treated me like I didn't belong in a place I literally own. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how deeply I hurt you. That's the problem, I said softly. You didn't try to realize. Her tears fell. But sympathy wasn't what I felt. Not anger either. Just clarity. Can we fix this? She whispered. Yes, I said truthfully. But not tonight. And not with words. She nodded slowly, understanding more in that moment than in the past decade. When I turned to walk away, Olivia stepped into my path. Ethan, she said quietly, please wait. Her voice was small. Not the confident, polished tone she always used when talking to others. This was something else. Something fragile. I didn't know, she said. I swear, I didn't know. I know, I replied. And that's part of the problem. She looked confused. You never asked who I became, I explained. You just assumed I stayed who I was. She swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to hurt you. But you did, I said. Every time you laughed at me. Every time you repeated Mom's comments about real careers. Every time you introduced me as your brother who dropped out to play with computers. She looked down at her shoes. You embarrassed me in front of your fiancé tonight, I added. But the irony is, the only embarrassment was your ignorance. Her breath caught. She blinked back tears. Ethan, can we start over? I hope so, I said. But it has to start with respect, not status. Then I stepped past her. Daniel intercepted me next, his expression stiff. Look, man, I didn't mean anything earlier. I was just joking around. I held his gaze. You weren't joking, I said. You were performing. For your friends. For your father. For yourself. And the fact that you thought humiliation was a joke tells me everything about your character. He clenched his jaw. If you have a problem with me. I don't, I said. I have a problem with how you treat people. including my sister. He blinked. I'm not the villain here, he said quietly. That depends on how you act moving forward. Before he could respond, Daniel's father approached, suddenly overly friendly. Ethan, my boy, we should talk business sometime. There's a lot we could accomplish together. No, I said simply. He stiffened. No? He echoed. You spent half the evening mocking me, I said. I'm not interested in working with people who value others only when there's something to gain. He stepped back, his face reddening. People around us watched, listening, absorbing everything. But I stayed calm, polite, composed, something none of them had expected. Because power isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. I eventually left the party, walking through the lobby as the night staff nodded respectfully. Outside, the cold air felt refreshing, clean, crisp, and honest. My driver opened the door of the black Aston Martin, but I paused before getting in, looking back up at the glowing tower. My tower, the one they said I would never be good enough to walk into. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I didn't feel victorious.